Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for joining us for our new CV Chamber webinar series. We have still a few people expected, so I'll just let them in as they arrive. But I am coming to you live from the new Comox Valley Chamber headquarters, downtown Courtenay. We just opened a new office, so we're hosting from this location today. So if you're in the neighborhood, please pop by. We're at 576 England. Um, so I've got everyone's mics muted, just so you know, and we're going to keep it that way. If you do have any questions during the webinar or any clarifications that are needed, please just pop it in the chat and I will be monitoring the chat as we go here. So happy to pass on any questions during when we take a couple of little breaks to do so. And then we will have time at the end for a little bit of a question period with Dana. So I'm very proud to introduce our webinar host today, Dana Starritt from Stream Grants and Consulting. And she is going to share her knowledge with us around grant writing. So please take it away, Dina.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for your lunchtime or whatever it is you're in the middle of. And I definitely would recommend stopping by the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce office. They've got a great, beautiful new setup down there. All right. I'm going to share my screen now. And hope that this goes according to plan. Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. As I think Carrie Ann just said, I can't see anybody at this point, but feel free to add any questions you might have as they come up into the chat, and Carrie can stop me if she wants to, and we can take them in the moment, or we can leave them to the end, parking lot them, and get to them at the end. I'll tell you a little bit about myself to start. My name is Dana Starritt, and I started Stream Grants and Consulting in June of 2022. I've been working in nonprofit administration for over 20 years now, and raised over 3 million in funding. I think really most of that just even in the last 2 years since I've really started focusing on grant writing as a consultant. I founded my own nonprofit in Vancouver in 2001, which is actually still operational today. And I was executive director of Black Creek Community Association for just about 10 years before I hung out my shingle as a consultant. I did my master's in leadership in 2008, and I'm a member of the Grants Professionals Association, and actually a charter member of the Canadian chapter of the Grants Professionals Association. And I'll talk a little bit more about that during the webinar. And as for yourself, I would love to know if you're interested in business or nonprofit side of things, whether you have any previous grant writing experience, or what exactly, if you have any specific goals from this workshop that you would want to take away. That we can we can talk about that at the end, but it just helps me to know where you're coming from as you come into this, or what you're interested in. Clearly my focus has been nonprofits in the past, but since I started consulting, I've done a few business grant applications already, and I can tell you that they are actually incredibly similar to nonprofit applications. Really, it's the same questions, the same preparation. So they're very similar, but I'm going to make every effort to make sure the webinar is relevant to both small businesses or nonprofits. I have gone over my experience, but I will just add that this is my first time doing a webinar. So hopefully it will all go smoothly. Bear with me if there's any hiccups. So the objective of the webinar today is to help prepare you to find grant funding, know where to look, prepare you to apply for the funding, and and hopefully prepare you to be successful in your application. And also a few tips on how to manage new funding money, because that's also a big piece of this. So the fundamental question for everybody as you start into this, if you are new to it, is the question, are you grant ready? You really want to stop here and think about your answer to that question. It's important that you get the right grant at the right time. And there's a few ways to achieve this, but really it's sort of a version of the 80/20 rule, if you're familiar with that. You don't want to spend 80% of your time chasing down a tiny little smidge of money that's not going to be really of value to your business or your nonprofit. What you really want to do is spend your time, which is your most valuable resource, and finding funding that is really a fit for your business, for your organization, for your project, and it's going to help you achieve what you want to do. And if you spend your time at this front loading and answering that question, the questions that we're going to look through in more detail in the slides to come, you can avoid mission drift, which is really important to avoid. It can be easy to go down a black hole chasing pots of money that really don't have anything to do with what you or your business or your organization wants to achieve. You don't want to get your business or your organization off course chasing pots of money that aren't really a fit for you. It is, it's easy to start saying, oh, there's money over here. And they want to do this. Let's start doing that. You want to avoid that. So it's really important to stay on course and not get sucked off in all directions, trying to get more money in the door. We call that mission drift. And it's important to stay on your own course. So the best way to do that, the best thing you can do to avoid mission drift, is to have a clear business plan, or in the case of a nonprofit, an organizational mission. And how can you achieve that? There's a couple of different ways. A strategic plan is is the pillar or a nonprofit. Having a great strategic plan will take you a long way, and it will ensure that as you are looking to grow, you aren't growing in often all wild directions. You want to know where you are in the moment. A strategic plan will help you identify where you are right now. It will help you identify where it is that you want to get to, and help you identify how you want to get there, and maybe even some things you want to make sure happen along the way. So it's an investment, and it's well worth the investment of time and of money. You can hire external consultants to do this kind of thing. There's many in the Valley. I do grant writing as my particular area of expertise, but I've also done a lot of strategic planning. And I'm happy to talk to any organization about being part of that piece of things for them if that's where you're at. So definitely look into who can help you get a strategic plan going. There's a couple of ways to do that too. Some people will annually revisit their entire strategic plan and set aside a day each year to, kind of take it all apart, start again, make sure you're on the right track. Some businesses or organizations will do, as best practice, a 5-year business plan. So spend a lot of time, maybe even a whole weekend, outlining a 5-year strategic plan, and then have 1-year tactical goals built in that you can sort of revisit each year to make sure things are still on track, or cross off the things you have done, work, and then set some new ones if needed. So a couple of different ways to attack a strategic plan, but it's a really great investment to have. You can also do an assessment of your business strategy or your mission or your organization by an external consultant. Business Development Bank of Canada, you might be familiar with already. They sometimes that's your first step in terms of funding money, is they will at various times have funding available that will enable you to bring in the services of a consultant who can do an assessment of your business strategy. So any of these kinds of tools that allow you to have a clear business plan are going to help you ensure alignment with the objectives of any grant opportunities that you do find. And that's that's putting the horse in front of the cart. So you don't want to be seeing money and then getting yourselves aligned with it. You want to have your mission. You want to have your business plan. And then when you see grant funding, you can say, yes, this is in line with what we want to do and what we're doing or where we want to get to. So it's a good fit. And then you're ready to start writing a grant. So we're at the point now where you've kind of laid that important building block down. And now you might be looking for funding opportunities. So we're just going to go through the things to consider when you're looking at those opportunities. So firstly, there's just general eligibility. And when you found a funding or financing opportunity, you want to spend a lot of time. Again, this is that kind of the front loading piece. You want to spend a lot of time reading what they've posted about their opportunity. They're going to have an information package. You want to read it not just once, but twice. You want to read every word, really, comb through it. You might even want to, take some notes, do a little funding brief, and you want to understand exactly what it is that they are trying to give money to, because that will help you figure out whether it's fit for you, whether you're going to be wasting your time chasing that money or whether this is really a good opportunity. If you read through that package really carefully, you're going to find out what kind of industry they want to fund. There was recently a large funding opportunity from provincial government. It was BC Manufacturing Jobs Fund. And so that's, a great fit for anybody who's in manufacturing. Destination BC often will put out different funding opportunities. So that's a great fit if you're in tourism. So you want to understand which industry they're working with and wanting to fund. Sometimes they'll be very clear about the number of employees or the business size in terms of revenues that they are funding. So make sure that you fit the profile. The Canadian Digital Adoption Plan recently, actually it recently closed. It was out and then they closed it. Not a lot of uptake on that one, but you had to have at least one employee. So I was looking at that for a client, but they were a one-person show, so it wasn't a fit for them. And then project size. So, basically most funding opportunities aren't going to be just for your company or for your organization. They're going to be for a specific project. So you're going to be looking at something very particular, and some funders will want to fund large projects, $250,000 to $500,000, and some will be small. So you want to know what the window is and whether your project fits that. They will often in that information package be clear about whether they're offering matching funds. So some funders will offer 50% of expenses, and the applicant will need to come up with the other 50% of expenses, either through their own revenues or through other funders. You'll want to check if there's any business licenses or permits that are going to be required, and make sure that you're in compliance for any and all business industry regulations, because they will be asking about that kind of thing. And do you have any debts or reporting owed? So sometimes, especially if you're going back to a funder for a second time, and you've already had funding from them, there might be reporting, and they're not going to fund you again for a new project if you haven't completed all your reporting for past funding. So important to make sure you followed up on all of that stuff. All right, and then project readiness. So again, this is like when you found an opportunity and you've got the project in mind that you want to fund. Again, you want a clear plan for the project. So that will be identifying goals for the project, timelines, expected outcomes. These are all going to be important things to have clearly thought about before you are going to be successful in getting a grant. Feasibility. Do you have the resources that it's going to take to get this project off the ground and to get it going? Do you have everything you need to make it sustainable, to keep it going? Or are you going to need more funding down the line? You're also going to want to think about having a grant management plan. So if you're, applying for funding for a project that's, $100,000, $250,000 in funding, that's a large injection of cash into your organization. You're going to want to have a plan to manage those funds, or you will make your bookkeeper or accountant crazy. So you want to have maybe a separate spreadsheet where you can track expenses, a plan to keep that project funding separate from your other revenues so that it's going to be easy when you're reporting, or when you're having to submit all your invoices and all your financial paperwork, that it's going to be easy to track, easy to find and give to the funder as required. There are often other reporting requirements for some of the large government grants. They will be asking who you're hiring. They'll want to know, are you hiring newcomers, females, Indigenous people? And so, you want to think about what kind of metrics you're going to want to if the funder is going to be asking you to report on those things afterwards. How many full-time jobs did your project result in? How many part-time jobs? How many external jobs? How many temporary jobs? If there's a construction project, any of those metrics, you're going to want to have a very planned way to record those things so that they're easy to pull out when needed. And they're going to help you along the way anyway, in terms of having a successful project. So good things to think about anyway. And the last one is something a lot of people don't think about, but it's really, really important. So staff support or buy-in on your project, because like I said, if you're bringing in a large injection of cash from a big grant, it takes a lot of work from a lot of different people on your team to manage that. So your bookkeeper is going to be involved, office administrator is going to be involved, you might have a project lead. You're going to be pulling in all different kinds of people to do various different parts of the project, and you don't want to drop it in anybody's lap all of a sudden. Hopefully everybody's been on board. Hopefully there's conversations that have been had and everybody's bought into the project and knows what it's going to take on their end to make it successful, and are signed on. So another important thing to think about. All right, financial readiness. So definitely you're going to be asked to supply all kinds of financial information about your organization or your business when you're submitting for any kind of funding or financing opportunities. So you want to have up-to-date and accurate financial statements. It could be 1 year of income, an income statement for one full year, or even better, a last full fiscal year reviewed or audited by an external accountant or internal. And a last fiscal year balance sheet will be important as well. Generally, although funding is usually project-based, they're gonna want to see organizational level finances as well. And then you're gonna need a detailed project budget that demonstrates how grant funds will be allocated. We're gonna get a little bit into budgets, but we're not gonna spend too much time there. Definitely it's something you can let Carrie Ann know if it's something you want future webinars on, because you could certainly have an entire webinar on its own just about budgets for grants. And it will help to demonstrate diversified revenues. Funders aren't going to be super comfortable if they feel like they're the only source of funding. If you can show that there's balance in your revenue and that you've got funding in from different sources, that will make the project look more sustainable or more realistic. You're not, pitting all your hopes on one basket kind of thing. So that will help to have diversified revenues. Okay, so you've got all these things ready. You've kind of done all this preparation work, which is the most important part. And then you're going to start tackling the grant itself and writing answers to all the questions. Each grant application will generally be specific unto itself. Funders have normally taken a lot of time to think about what it is that they're trying to fund and what they want to achieve with the money that they're putting out there. So they'll come up with very specific questions that are going to get the information that they're looking for from you. So yeah, each application will be very specific. However, over time, if you're going to be looking for funding ongoing, you might want to start thinking about having a little space where you keep boilerplate boilerplate paragraphs or sentences. So there are a lot of repetitive questions in grants and grant applications in general. They're quite, there are typical questions. So if you come up, as you develop answers, you can kind of save those and they can be cut and pasted. And then obviously tailored for exactly what this specific opportunity that you're looking at in the moment is. They're not going to be entirely cut and pastable. So typically you're going to want to have this sort of project or program description ready. You're going to want to think about who, what, where, when, and how, the old classic questions. So who is the team? Who are the people who are involved in executing the project? You want to be able to identify them. And you might even be asked what their skill sets are, what is their expertise in this area, to prove that they have what it takes to pull off the project. What is the project? What are the activities? What are the goods or the services that are going to be coming out of this project? Describe them. And then where the activities will take place. Is it going to be on site in your office or your retail space or your organization headquarters, or is this something where you're going out into the field or creating a new location? Anything like that. So specific about where it's going to happen. And then when. You almost always will be asked for a timeline or milestones or both. So you want to know what the sort of major steps are in your plan. And how. What are you going to need in terms of equipment or supplies to pull this off and be successful? A few other things to think about in terms of commonly asked questions or things that will generally be asked in a grant application. What will the funding help you achieve? So you want to think about the goals and objectives, and the impact the funding will have on your business, your industry, or your community. So for an example, let's say a business is applying for funding to purchase a 3D printer. I'm making things up, but a 3D printer. The goal is to purchase the 3D printer. The objective would be to create a new product. The impact on your business would be that then you have a new product that's going to make you relevant to new clients, say, so you'll be selling more product and your revenues will go up. For your industry, well, then let's assume you're in manufacturing. The ability to create this product is increasing the profile of manufacturing on Vancouver Island, or maybe in BC or the Pacific Northwest, depending on the geographic scope of your business or organization. But those are the kinds of impacts you want to think about. And then your community. So if you're creating a new product, you're going to need more employees to make that product. So that means meaningful, well-paid jobs for your community. If your business is growing, that might mean increased taxes for your municipal area, and that will have positive effects on your community. And might just build pride for the residents of your community that these exciting ventures are happening. So just think about those kinds of impacts. You want to be able to lay those out somewhere in your application. Accessibility for nonprofits, that might mean that your service or your product doesn't have any barriers to accessing it. It might be exposure. Accessibility might mean, can people find you? Can people find your product? Marketing and that kind of thing. So either of those can be relevant in the questions that you're going to get asked. And community support or need. For a business, this might be market need, but just addressing that question of how you know that this is something that's needed. What are some statistics or proof that the need is there, and that the community, your business community, or your community, your population is supporting your efforts to bring it. And then definitely you want to think about how you will evaluate and measure success. So again, that goes back to the metrics. Think about metrics that you want to keep that will help you show to a funder and future funders that the project was successful. You might want to do quantitative evaluation, which would be surveys or feedback, testimonials, that kind of thing. So definitely have a plan for how you will evaluate and measure success. A lot of funders these days are looking for that kind of for outcomes, specific outcomes, and they want to be able to be accountable to their funders. Like United Way, for example, is a classic, or a community foundation. People give to those foundations, and the foundation will spread it out into the community to projects, and they want to know that they'll have ways to measure, to present the successes that they're having in the community to their funders. So they will use your metrics to show their funders that. So another good reason to track. And as you are building your responses, these are the things you want to make sure are happening. You want to make sure you're answering the question. So again, funders have asked very specific questions to get the information that they need. So make sure you're reading the question really carefully and that you're answering the question. And that's probably the most important thing. The next most important thing is that it's compelling. So you want what you are saying about your project to be compelling. A whole bunch of facts isn't going to be all that compelling. So you want it to pull on the heartstrings. You want it to have value. You want to be able to show the value through how you're describing the project. And then, of course, you need it to be clear and rational. There's an incredible statistic that I heard recently that there's I think it was something like $7 million left on the table every year of grant funding that isn't claimed because there just isn't enough applications or good enough applications. So as long as you can get your applications in and your answers are clear and rational and ideally compelling, you have a good shot. And I just want to take a quick second here to talk about AI, because a lot of people will say, no, can't you just use AI to write a grant application now? And I would suggest that you think of that sort of like a teacher, how a teacher might feel if they've put out an assignment where it requires an essay response, and it gets quite obvious, it gets quite easy to spot AI generated text when you're familiar with it. And I would just suggest that same way a teacher might not be all that impressed if they're reading an obviously AI generated essay response, a funder probably is not going to be all that impressed if they're reading an AI generated response, something that's clearly AI generated. So I would encourage using AI to brainstorm ideas or language, but you really have to take whatever it's generating for you and then personalize it and tailor it to the response. It can be quite clear when it is AI. So use it for generating ideas, but don't rely on it. So we'll just take a quick look at a sample budget. As I said, we're not going to get into the weeds on this here. You could spend a lot of time. I am just using a generic spreadsheet that I will often use. I will often use something like this, and you just put in the project name. You want to list your revenues. It's helpful to show funders as confirmed or unconfirmed. It goes back to that point that funders like to know how dependent or not dependent your project is going to be on their funding. Can it go ahead if their funding doesn't come in? It shows preparation, and it shows your own ability to pivot if depending on what funding does or doesn't come in. And it just gives them a good idea of the project's likelihood of success. It helps to have that percentage of total budget in there. It's just an easy, digestible way for them to get information out of your budget quickly. In a nonprofit, it would be important for your project revenues and expenses to net out to zero. That might not be the case for a business application. But again, it's nice to have that column where you can, these are all very made up, so these amounts might not make any sense, but these are tips. A few of these are typical expense lines. And it helps if you can show where the funding dollars from each funder is going to go. this is especially the case because many funders will have a fairly comprehensive list of eligible and ineligible costs. And again, you have to read those very, very carefully. You don't want to allocate XYZ funding to professional fees if they've been very clear in their list of eligible costs that they won't fund professional fees. So it allows them to quickly look at what it is they're funding and make sure that that fits with what they want to be funding. So the other thing I'll just speak to quickly here is administration. So typically you can allow approximately 15% to administration. This is sort of the generally accepted amount. Probably most for nonprofits, I know for sure, administration is probably more like 18 to 20% of expenses, but funders don't like to see too much there. So they typically it's either 10 or 15%. So and usually you would, figure out what 15% is of your organizational expenses. And then, that might be that might be different things that would go into that, say insurance or management or payroll or things that are organizational wide expenses. And then if you have a program budget that was, so say you had $1 million in organizational, for your organizational budget, your total organizational admin would be $150,000. For a program budget, if your program is say $100,000, then you'd again have 15% towards admin, which would be $15,000. So that's generally how it works, organizational versus project administration. You're going to be asked for supporting documents, so you're going to want to have these ready. Letters of support are often asked for, even if they're not, they're great to have. So these might come from clients, they might come from industry leads. Like if you're applying for the manufacturing grant and you're in the timber and you have a timber related business, you might go to the appropriate provincial minister, and ask for a letter of support. You might go to your municipal government, so CBRD might write a letter of support, or your MLA or MP, or even the Chamber of Commerce might write a letter of support. So any of those would be great to include in a grant application. Quotes are very helpful, especially for your major project costs. So if you're applying for funding for a renovation to a shop to increase your productivity, if you've gotten quotes from contractors, suppliers, that kind of thing, that will go a long way to showing project readiness. Even if you are doing some IT upgrades, if you've got a quote for laptops, if that's part of it, 15 laptops, that kind of thing is great to support your application. If you had a market assessment or analysis done, back to what I was saying earlier, but accessing Business Development Bank of Canada for those kinds of things. If you've had that done and you can attach that as part of your application, that will be great. And then same for a business plan assessment or analysis or a feasibility study. Any of those documents would be great to include. Also demonstration of previous project or team successes. So if you're applying for a project and you've already done something similar, not the same, but similar, and can speak to the success of that, that's a great way to show that you're ready to take on the project that you're applying for funding for. If you think you've got a super strong team and can, just create a document that lays out the team and their skill sets, that can help your application as well. So all different things that can help you be successful in your application. Okay, so where can you find funders? This is a little bit different for nonprofits than it is for small businesses. On the nonprofit side, there is the public library. Back in 2001, when I started a nonprofit in Vancouver, I had to go to the public library and take out a ginormous blue book. It's a reference book, and it would list all the funders in Canada alphabetically by area of interest. and I would just have to sit and copy it down and then go look them up separately. So that is still available. Those are digitized now as databases, but they cost a lot of money. So there might be some of you have questions about and the many databases that are out there. Another way to get access to those databases is to use a grant writer like myself. As a member of the Grants Professionals Association, I have access to Grant Station. And the next couple slides will show you the insides of Grant Station and how I look for grant funding in there. But they cost a lot of money. And I've had a lot of questions since I started my business about whether it's worth the subscription money to use a company like Grant. Oh, there's so many of them. But for me though, you have to be a very large nonprofit and probably have an entire fundraising team that can spend time using those databases. They're very complicated. And they're expensive. So you're going to be putting almost $2,000 a year into them, and some of them will guarantee you'll get that back. But I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. But Charity Village is a wonderful website. They have created a new list of funders that's very helpful. And if you're trying to save money, that's a great place to start. And I will just say quickly that Carrie Ann has a list of resources that I think you're going to be getting a survey at the end of this webinar. And the survey might even itself have the resources attached. So there's a few the resources will have links to some of these things, some of these places. It's always possible too, if you found a specific funder like HRSDC does the Canada Summer Jobs Grant. If you're on that site, you can sign up for the newsletter, and then you'll get emails dropped in your inbox that say funding is opened for enabling accessibility, for instance, say. So if that might be useful to you, if you're doing a renovation, you might be able to add in some accessibility features with grant money. So when you're looking up funders individually, look for whether they have an email newsletter list and sign up. So small businesses, a little bit different. Again, you can also just sign up for email distribution newsletters. There is also a tool called Business Benefits Finder, which we're actually going to do a demo of in a second here. But to go through the rest first, there are a number of tailored business support groups. For example, Women Entrepreneurs of BC, WeBC, is fantastic. If you're a female entrepreneur starting a small business, I would highly recommend getting connected with them. We have a regional ambassador who was the previous owner of Excel Career College, Pauline Stevenson. She's amazing. Great person to connect with locally for WeBC. Community Futures is also great, and it's just a little bit more local, but have a lot of the same features as Business Development Canada in terms of advising. And Pacifican is a great place to check out. They are economic development initiatives for Western Canada, and put out funding quite regularly. So they just recently had one tourism growth program, and I wrote a couple of different grants for that funding round. Tourism operators locally who are looking to buy new equipment, invest in their infrastructure to grow their operations. So that was a great opportunity for them. Okay, so we are going to jump out. I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint here, and we're going to go back to this Business Benefits Finder. So hang on one sec. Let me just make sure I can do this. And, oh wait, sorry. Okay, hang on one sec. I'm just going to get this set up. Hmm. Okay, Carrie, maybe can you confirm that you're saying this?
Sorry there. Yeah, I can see your screen.
You
Yeah.
can, okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
maybe just make it full screen though, Dana, if you don't mind.
Would I do that? Is it most of the screen? Because I can't figure out how to do the
Yeah,
full.
no problem. It looks good.
Okay. Okay, so if you're not aware of business benefits finder, this is a great tool. It can lead you down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I spoke about the black hole of chasing funding money, and it taking you off course. This might happen a little bit here, but it will also, you just have to be aware if it is drawing you off course, but also, it might just, on the positive side, just open up your awareness of different funding opportunities or places to look for funding that you hadn't thought of. So it's kind of a fun tool. You just sort of go through. So I've got sort of a setup thing here that will show you how this works. So I'm looking for wage subsidies and interns. My main goal is to hire or train employees. And now tell us about your company or organization. We are in British Columbia. And we're in the business of, and I chose this because I recently did a grant for a business in this sector, but tourism, accommodation, and food beverages, specifically amusement and recreation. We have 5 employees. And our annual revenue is 0 to 99. Oops. We are incorporated and we are for profit. And we're looking for programs that support businesses owned by rural or northern residents. And here you can choose only programs that are accepting clients right now, or all programs accepting and not accepting clients. So we're going to click all programs just to see more options, but you might be looking for things that are just open right now to you. So there's 22 results. And so then you just scroll through what it is kicked out for you. And like I said, you don't want to just start going down rabbit holes that are going to lead you away from what it is that you do, but maybe money for small business enterprises and nonprofits to hire youth. Maybe that's something that's a value to you, and it's basically a funding for digital skills for youth program, or a wage subsidy for developing tech talent that might be of use. You can expand all of these, so grants and funding. Funding to support employers towards economic recovery. So this might be a value, and you just follow the links. BC Employer Training Grant. These will give you different ideas of funders to follow, along your journey. Like I said, you don't want to get carried away and get carried off track, but it's great for information. So loans and capital investment, loan for small business owners. There's tax credit, apprentice training, tax credit for employers. There'll always be lots of expert advice available. So, you have to just determine whether these are fits for you. A lot of this is BDC. Partnering and collaboration. So, and other support. Post job openings at the job bank. You can find all these different places to find or hire or train interns. So it's a great tool. I would suggest checking it out on your own time. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to quickly go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. And now back to nonprofits for a second. I have two screenshots. I'm not going to do a live demo, but it's a screenshot of Grant Station, which is the database that I have access to as part of my Grant Professionals Association. So, once I've signed in and I'm in there, I would be ticking provincial grant makers, maybe national grant makers as well. Those might be relevant. And I can narrow my search to areas of interest, target populations, the types of support, whether it's capacity building or capital projects or operating, or the type of grant maker or the deadline. So lots of different things that you can narrow down when you're looking for something. And then when you've put all that in, it will kick out your results page. It will give you all the funders who are relevant to your project or your organization, and you can save them for later. You can create projects in here. I obviously have spreadsheets that are general, that I maintain to track funders. I also track specifically for different clients. So I'll create a spreadsheet specific to a client that I'm working with, using this database. So it's excellent. So this, whatever I put in here is the test search, kicked out 189 results. So there are lots of funding results in there. So yeah, that's where you can find funding. Why would you hire a grant writer? So the question is outsourcing or doing this in-house. I have a lot of grant writing experience, so that gives me insight that I can convey to you. Especially in terms of that front loading stuff, as soon as I'm talking to a client about a potential grant opportunity, I will go in my mind, go straight to that. Are you grant ready? And my experience will allow me to make a quick determination of whether you are grant ready or not. Maybe you need to back up and do some of that preliminary work, like a strategic plan, or really nail down your project before you go chasing money. It might be an outside fresh perspective that in that conversation that is helpful as well. You don't have to pay for office space, benefits, or supplies when you're outsourcing to a contracted grant writer. So if you have an employee, you have to keep them busy. And if there is a low time, it might be costing you money. But my work is very specific. Once the work's done, I'm done. Access to the Grant Station database is definitely a benefit. And also just thinking about your own internal capacity and or your need to focus on other priorities. So all of the time that you might spend writing grants is time that you can't spend doing other things. And sometimes grant writing, I find it takes a very focused concentration on that project of grant writing. So that's very hard to do if you're also being called off to do a million and one other things for your organization or your business. And you get up-to-date sector best practices. So when I became a member of the Grant Professionals Association, there's a code of conduct that I had to agree to. And so you can know that I'm maintaining that code, which actually very clearly states that you should not work for commission or percentage. And that's basically because, if I'm going to write a grant application for you, it's very similar to, say, writing a business plan. I'm creating that product. In this case, it's a grant application, not a business plan, but you're going to take that product and you're going to apply it. And once I've created it, it's out of my control. It's also out of my control whether there are a lot of people applying for that same funding and a lot of competition, or whether there's just better aligned projects. So a lot of people will say, what's your success rate? And that's not meant to be the focus of for a grant writer. Really, the focus is their skill set in terms of identifying a good fit and then having the experience and the insight to write a successful application for you and focus on that. So I can tell you that I have been very successful, and that's probably because I spend a lot of time on making sure that the grant that we're going to write an application for is a good fit. And just having a pretty good sense now over time of what is and isn't a good fit. And And then using a contracted grant writer will strengthen your own internal capacity over time. At the end of the, like if you're just hiring a grant writer for one application, you will then have that application and you can cut and paste some of the text over time and be more and more ready internally to write more grants or apply for funding opportunities in the future yourselves. So I am actually, I said to Carrie Ann, I am basically a case study in why you should outsource, because I thought I could build a website and a logo myself, and I still don't have either. And that's because I'm not a specialist in website building or logo making. So that's why I need to outsource an expert to do that for me. So I don't have that yet. It is in construction because I finally came to my senses. But in the meantime, that's my phone number and my email, and you're welcome to reach out if you'd like to discuss a project that you're in the midst of. So Carrie, that's it for me. I don't know if there's questions that have been shared in the chat, or if anybody, if you want to go live with people asking questions for the last bit.
Yeah, so wow, thanks, Dina. That was so informative. Really appreciate all the work that you put into that. And yeah, we just had asking to review the financial readiness points. But just so everyone knows, we are going to share the information that Dana so knowledgeably laid out for us. Either the screen recording or the information off the slides. We'll see what looks best and then make sure that everyone that attended gets that information. And if you do, we have a couple more minutes, about 9 more minutes left in our webinar here. If there is any additional questions or clarification for Dana, if you want to throw it in the chat, then I can read it out. And yeah, it would be great to hear from all of you, your feedback. So there is a survey that's attached to this webinar that you'll be receiving once it's completed. So if you would kindly fill that out and help the Comox Valley Chamber create more content that is relevant to the local business community and nonprofit community. What skills are you looking for? What kind of knowledge do you have to share? We'd love to facilitate all kinds of different subject matter. So I don't see, oh, here we go. I've got Bo saying, can you speak to small businesses that have no team? For example, creative project and educator project initiatives. Anything on that, Dana?
Yeah, I'm sure there's funding for, one-person teams as well out there. I would suggest start with that business benefits finder and try to avoid rabbit holes, but it might give you some ideas. It depends on what you're looking to do. So are you wanting to expand your one-man show? Are you wanting to hire an employee? There's generally a lot of opportunities to get wages for a new employee subsidized, or to get money to hire or train new people. So if that's what you're looking for, you need more people. Educational projects for community. So there's a bit of a social service, but you're for profit, you're a business. Yes. Yeah, you might be able to straddle both worlds there a little bit. I mean, social enterprise is really a business that has some benefit that goes into a nonprofit. It's kind of a complicated legal structure, but it sounds like maybe you're needing funding to be able to offer this educational opportunity into more communities. So, if that's the technology to do so, because it's virtual, you might want to sort of search that avenue. If you're going on the road, that would be a different kind of funding. So it kind of depends a little bit on it depends a lot on the project. You want to just in collaboration with educational institutions. Yeah, well, I think Carrie Ann will have everybody's email. I'm happy to get your email from her, and if I have some further thoughts on that, I can email you any further thoughts.
Yeah, you can definitely, everyone look out for that survey. Please give us your feedback, ideas, suggestions, and then we'll be able to share. Also, look for an email from me at hello@Comox Valley Chamber, sharing the information from the webinar and some useful links, Dana's contact info, those kind of things. And please feel free to reach out to Dana directly if you have if you require her skills, want to hire her to get that grant. Um, and yeah, unless there's any other questions, I think we're going to wrap it up. We're right in our last few minutes here. But thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a great day today. Enjoy the sunshine, and yeah, good luck with your projects.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.